The identity puzzle. Understanding the ship of Theseus. One of the most enduring philosophical dilemmas, the ship of Theseus challenges our understanding of identity and transformation. It poses deep questions about whether something can remain the same even as all of its parts are gradually replaced. Imagine a ship that undergoes continual repairs over many years, with each plank, sail, and beams swapped out for new ones. Once not a single original part remains, can we still truthfully claim it's the same ship? This age-old thought experiment raises significant questions about what truly constitutes identity over time. Named after the mythical Greek hero Theseus, the paradox is rooted in the legend where, following Theseus's heroic exploits, including his battle with the Minotaur, the people of Athens preserved his ship in tribute. Over the years, decay set in, and to maintain the vessel, the Athenians replaced every deteriorating component. Eventually, none of the initial materials were left. This prompts a fascinating debate. Is the refurbished ship genuinely the one Theseus sailed, or has it become something entirely different? At first glance, one might argue that it's the same vessel. It maintains the same design, serves the same function, and continues to be honored as Theseus's ship. However, the absence of any original materials complicates that assumption. If its physical makeup has entirely changed, can its identity still be considered intact? This scenario introduces us to the philosophical problem of persistence through change. One way to look at this is through the lens of physical continuity, the idea that an object remains the same as long as some connection remains between its past and present states. In this framework, the more parts that are replaced, the more its identity seems to shift. But this raises further questions. Is there a precise moment or percentage of change at which the ship stops being the same? Or is its transformation gradual and indistinct? An alternative viewpoint centers on conceptual continuity, the idea that an object's essence lies not in its materials, but in the role it plays and how it's perceived. From this angle, the ship remains Theseus's as long as society continues to recognize and treat it as such. In other words, it's the function, significance, and symbolism that sustain its identity, not the wood it's built from. This way of thinking mirrors real-life scenarios. Consider a museum artifact that has undergone careful restoration. Even with new materials, it might still be viewed as authentic because it represents a certain history or era. Likewise, the ship of Theseus may be considered the same so long as it remains a symbol tied to its legendary origins. Still, a key question remains. When we say something is the same, what exactly are we referring to? A set of materials? A function? A social construct? If identity hinges purely on concept, could anything fit the mold, so long as it aligns with that concept? The paradox becomes even more complex with a twist on the original scenario. Suppose every removed piece of the ship was preserved. If all these old parts were eventually reassembled into a ship, we'd now have two vessels, one made of replacements and one of the original wood. Which of them, if either, is the true ship of Theseus? This twist introduces the problem of reconstitution. If we value the original components above continuity, then perhaps the reassembled ship is the authentic one. After all, it's made of the exact planks Theseus once sailed. In that case, the repaired ship might be considered a copy, even though it has continuously existed and held cultural meaning. Yet this raises a dilemma. The refurbished ship was the one preserved with intention and reverence, honored as a relic of Theseus's legacy. Can we really dismiss it just because its parts are new? The restored ship holds unbroken historical significance, while the reassembled one, though made of original parts, has no such lineage. The time traveler's dilemma. Picture a world where moving through time is within the realm of possibility. You possess a machine that allows you to journey into the past. Driven by curiosity, you decide to visit your grandfather during his youth. However, something unexpected occurs. During your visit to the past, you inadvertently stop your grandfather from ever crossing paths with your grandmother. As a result, your parents are never born, and by extension, you never come into existence. Now here's the perplexing part. If you were never born, How could you have traveled to the past in the first place to prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother? Without your existence, the initial time-traveling action would never have occurred. This creates a logical inconsistency. Your interference erases the conditions necessary for your interference to happen at all. This mind-bending contradiction is commonly referred to as the grandfather paradox. It's a cornerstone issue in conversations about time travel and causal relationships. It confronts our standard assumptions about cause and effect, and it provokes deep questions about whether the past can be changed at all. To better grasp this concept, imagine this. If you are able to return to the past and make changes that result in your non-existence, then logically you couldn't have made those changes to begin with. The cause, your journey back in time, conflicts with the outcome, your erasure from existence. Hence, the paradox arises. The grandfather paradox isn't just an abstract curiosity, it carries profound consequences for how we understand the mechanics of time travel. If backward time travel were feasible, it might result in contradictory outcomes and tangled causal chains that defy logical coherence. This puzzle pushes us to contemplate the true nature of time, existence, and whether the past is malleable. One popular theory used to address this dilemma is the parallel universe or alternate timeline hypothesis. According to this idea, changing the past does not alter the timeline you came from but instead generates a completely new, divergent reality. In this new universe, your actions prevent your own birth, but this change affects only that alternate branch of time. The timeline from which you originally came remains intact, preserving the consistency of events in both versions of reality. In this way, the paradox is avoided. Rather than tampering with one fixed timeline, time travel leads to the creation of separate, internally consistent timelines. Another theoretical resolution involves the concept of closed time-like curves or time loops. This perspective holds that all events are part of a continuous, self-contained loop. Any action you take while traveling into the past is already a part of history. In essence, you are unable to alter significant past events because your actions have already been woven into the fabric of the timeline. From this viewpoint, the paradox is resolved by asserting that the timeline cannot be changed. Even if your presence in the past seems like it should disrupt the future, everything plays out in a way that preserves consistency, forming a loop where every cause and effect fit perfectly. The grandfather paradox also encourages us to confront the boundaries of what we know, or think we know, about time and causality. It challenges the idea that causes always precede effects and invites us to reevaluate our perception of time's linearity. Far from being just a mental exercise, the paradox has relevance in multiple domains: theoretical physics, philosophical inquiry, and even pop culture. It invites exploration into how time works, whether free will exists, and how causality can be understood in a universe where time travel might be possible. In science, particularly physics, this paradox sparks debates about whether the laws of nature would permit such inconsistencies. Einstein's theory of relativity, for example, allows for time travel under certain extreme conditions, such as near-light speed travel or warping of spacetime, but it also suggests natural barriers that might prevent contradictions, like requiring infinite energy or the existence of closed time loops. Philosophically, the grandfather paradox questions the notion of determinism versus free will. If traveling to the past means you can't change anything significant, are your actions fated? Or is your freedom to make choices restricted by the very structure of time? In the world of fiction, this paradox has inspired countless narratives. Books, films, and series have creatively explored the strange consequences of meddling with the past. These stories often highlight the puzzle's complexity and offer imaginative solutions that reflect our ongoing fascination with time travel. Ultimately, the grandfather paradox continues to serve as a captivating thought experiment. It pushes the limits of how we perceive time, logic, and the nature of reality itself. While time travel remains a theoretical idea, the paradox offers profound insights into the logical and existential challenges we'd face if it ever became real. In essence, the grandfather paradox isn't merely a riddle, it's a gateway to deeper questions about who we are, how we got here, and whether our pasts are truly set in stone. This highlights a profound realization. Identity may not be a fixed or singular concept. Both ships could be considered Theseuses, each representing a different type of continuity. One reflects material authenticity, the other, functional and symbolic continuity. This conflict appears in many aspects of life. For example, in restoring ancient architecture or artworks, we often debate whether to keep decayed original materials or replace them to preserve the structure's integrity. The underlying issue mirrors the ship of Theseus. What do we value more, the substance or the story? This ancient puzzle also resonates in today's world, particularly in science and medicine. Modern technologies allow us to replace human organs and body parts. If a person undergoes such extensive medical replacement, are they still the same individual? If every organ were substituted with artificial parts, what happens to personal identity? Beyond the physical, the concept extends into the psychological. The ship of Theseus isn't conscious, but when we apply the idea to humans, memory and awareness come into play. Our lives involve constant change, physical, emotional, mental. So, do we remain the same person throughout, or does each change create a new self? In that light, the paradox becomes a metaphor for human identity. It invites us to consider not just the body's role, but also memory, personality, and experience. Do these elements form a kind of psychological glue that binds our identity even as everything else evolves? Some philosophers argue that continuity of consciousness, our memories, traits, and awareness, is what truly defines us. According to this view, we are the same person if our inner story continues, even as the physical structure changes dramatically. Other thinkers introduce the concept of narrative identity, the idea that who we are is best understood as a story. As long as that story remains coherent, identity is preserved. It's not just about the body or the mind, but the way we interpret and frame our lives over time. This thinking also applies to cultural and institutional identity. Societies often update their customs, buildings, or symbols while preserving their meaning. A repaired monument or evolving tradition can still be considered the same if it carries forward the same values and purpose. Similarly, institutions like universities or governments change their structures and personnel constantly, yet they continue to serve the same roles. Their identity persists because of the function they perform and the meaning they hold, not because of unchanged parts. In summary, the ship of Theseus presents a powerful lens through which we can examine identity, continuity, and transformation. Whether we look at legal definitions, personal experiences, or cultural practices, we find the same essential question: what truly defines something as being the same? By exploring this paradox, we challenge ourselves to think beyond simplistic definitions. Identity may lie not in physical components alone, but in the interplay between purpose, perception, memory, and meaning. It's a journey not just about ships, but about what it means to remain ourselves through time. The puzzle of self-referential truth. The liar paradox is a well-known and thought-provoking enigma in both logic and philosophy that investigates the complications surrounding truth and self-reference. This dilemma arises from statements that refer to themselves in ways that generate logical inconsistencies. To grasp its essence, let's explore its basic structure and what it reveals about our comprehension of logic. At its core, the paradox is often captured by the sentence, "This statement is false." Let's analyze this sentence. If we accept it as true, then it must correctly describe itself as being false. But if it's false, then the statement is actually true, since it truthfully claims to be false. This creates a contradiction because a statement cannot simultaneously be true and false. This paradox exposes a flaw in traditional logical systems, particularly those that sort all statements into a binary system, either true or false. The liar paradox defies this system, presenting a situation where a statement's truth value cannot be settled. Historically, this puzzle dates back to ancient philosophy. One of the earliest examples is attributed to Epimenides, a philosopher from Crete, who reportedly said, "All Cretans are liars." Since Epimenides was himself a Cretan, his statement refers back to himself. If what he says is true, then he is lying, making the statement false. But if he's lying, then the statement must be false, meaning not all Cretans are liars, including him, which again contradicts the original claim. In modern logical theory, the paradox is often restated simply as, "This statement is false," emphasizing its recursive structure. This sharpens the paradox and makes it a precise example of the difficulties created by self-referential statements. Extensions of the liar paradox take on other forms. For example, consider the claim, "This statement is neither true nor false." This version challenges the idea that every statement must fit neatly into the binary categories of truth and falsehood, suggesting the need for more nuanced systems of logic. Self-referential networks can also be constructed. Imagine a group of statements, each referring to the truth value of the others. This creates a web of interdependent self-references that further complicate the logical structure. These variations show the paradox is flexible and can evolve to test different aspects of logical coherence. The liar paradox has significant relevance to logic and the development of formal systems. It highlights weaknesses in systems that rely solely on binary values for truth. When self-reference is introduced, such systems can collapse under contradiction. One method of handling these issues is to build logical frameworks that avoid self-reference. Bertrand Russell, for instance, introduced type theory, which arranges sets in a hierarchy so that no set can contain itself. This helps eliminate problematic self-referential loops. On a philosophical level, the liar paradox compels us to question the very concept of truth. It challenges the assumption that every proposition must be either true or false, pushing us to consider alternative models. It also underscores the complexity of language and meaning, showing how self-referential phrases can disrupt standard interpretations. Different philosophical approaches have been developed in response. Semantic theories aim to establish structured rules for determining the truth of statements, even in self-referential contexts. Dialetheism, another approach, embraces the possibility that a statement can be both true and false simultaneously, which challenges classical logic but offers a way to accommodate paradoxes without eliminating them. The liar paradox has had a profound influence on logic and philosophical inquiry. It has driven the development of more advanced theories capable of addressing these challenges. In exploring the liar paradox, we deepen our understanding of truth, logic, and the boundaries of formal reasoning. Its influence extends beyond theoretical discussions. In computer science, the paradox underscores the dangers of improper recursion. For instance, a recursive function that lacks a clear termination condition can result in infinite loops, echoing the structure of the paradox. Programmers use base cases and other techniques to prevent such problems, applying practical solutions to the theoretical issues highlighted by the paradox. In mathematical logic, the paradox relates closely to Gödel's incompleteness theorems, which reveal that in any sufficiently complex formal system there are true statements that cannot be proven within the system. Gödel's work reflects the same kind of self-reference seen in the liar paradox and expands it to show the inherent limitations of formal logic. In linguistics, the paradox challenges how we define meaning, particularly in the case of self-referential expressions. Semantic theories work to establish systems for interpreting these statements without falling into contradiction, contributing to a broader understanding of how language conveys truth and meaning. Culturally, The liar paradox has inspired countless works in literature, visual art, and media, often symbolizing the tension between reality and perception. From philosophical debates to sci-fi narratives, it continues to intrigue and stimulate creative thinking. In essence, the liar paradox not only confronts us with the limitations of traditional logical systems, but also pushes the boundaries of thought in logic, language, philosophy, and beyond. By grappling with its challenges, we come closer to understanding the nature of truth, the constraints of logic, and the power and peril of self-reference.